What if I told you that the battles you've faced, the isolation you've endured, and the closed doors that made you question your worth were never signs of rejection, but rather confirmation of your calling? You're not like the others, and deep down, you've always known that. You've walked through life carrying an invisible weight, a sense that you were never meant to blend in. While others easily fit into crowds and conform to trends, you've felt that inner resistance, that subtle divine discomfort every time you were asked to be someone you're not. And now, that very resistance is being revealed for what it truly is. Evidence that you've been set apart. You weren't meant to walk the wide road. You weren't meant to echo the masses. Because chosen ones aren't molded by popularity. They're refined by purpose. And that purpose is beginning to unfold. There is a reason the world seemed loud to you, while your spirit longed for something quieter, something deeper, something sacred. There's a reason trivial things never satisfied you, why small talk left you empty, why chasing material success felt like trying to quench a spiritual thirst. You were never meant for the surface. You've always carried depth, and when God crafts depth into a soul, He hides it until the appointed time. The pain of being misunderstood, the loneliness of being different, the frustration of always feeling like you're waiting for something unseen. These weren't curses, they were confirmations. Every delay was protection. Every no was divine orchestration. You've been marked, not for fame, but for impact. And now the ones who once overlooked you will be the very ones who look to you for answers. What you didn't realize during those silent years, those overlooked moments, was that you were being shielded, not sidelined. Shielded from the noise that could have drowned your purpose. Shielded from platforms that would have promoted your name before your character was ready to carry the weight of your assignment. God was never late. He was precise. And right now, in the divine calendar of heaven, your name is moving into visibility, not for vanity, but for victory. The veil is lifting. The hidden is about to be revealed. And you, the one who thought they were forgotten, are actually the one the world's been waiting for. For years it felt like you were walking through fog, a fog of confusion, of questions, of waiting. But what if I told you the fog wasn't there to obscure your future? It was there to shield your preparation. The silence was never a punishment. It was a sacred pause, a divine intermission between who you were and who you were becoming. God didn't forget you. He was forming you. Because when a chosen one is being prepared, heaven doesn't rush. Heaven refines. Heaven isolates. Heaven watches to see how you respond when no one is clapping, when no one is calling, when no one is coming to save you. It is in that silence that your faith was forged. In that stillness, your spiritual authority was born. Think about it. The greatest stories ever told, the ones that changed nations, that shifted destinies, always had a hidden chapter. Moses had 40 years in the wilderness. Joseph had years in a prison. David, anointed to be king, went back to tending sheep. These weren't delays. They were blueprints. They were models of divine process, because every chosen one must endure the stripping before the crowning, the breaking before the building. And that season you called stuck. That was sacred training. While others were being promoted by man, you were being prepared by God. And now, that preparation is about to collide with opportunity. You see, something is happening behind the scenes, something the news will never report, something your social feed can't detect. High-ranking officials, yes, actual leaders in places of real authority, are beginning to sense that their strategies are failing. Their intellect isn't enough. Their technology isn't solving what's crumbling. And without even fully understanding why, their spirits are being drawn to something higher. They may not call it God, but they're desperate for something only heaven can supply. And guess who's been prepared for that moment? You. You, who sat in rooms where no one listened. You who saw things others couldn't see. You who wept in private while smiling in public. You who carried discernment but were told to stay quiet. You've been prepared, not just for a spiritual revival, but for a governmental encounter. This isn't about religion. This is about influence. This is about decisions that affect nations. And the people in power, those whose words can shift economies and laws, they are beginning to look beyond their echo chambers. They're searching for divine insight. They're not looking for loud voices. They're looking for aligned hearts. Don't be surprised when you're contacted. Don't be shocked when your name is called. The meeting won't make you chosen. It will only reveal that you always were. When you were weeping, when you were wondering if your life even mattered, that's when heaven was writing your appointment. A God-appointed official, whether they realize it yet or not, has already been drawn to your name, not because of your resume, but because of your anointing, because of your readiness, because of what's been hidden inside you, sealed for a time such as this. This isn't the beginning of your story, it's the beginning of your unveiling. And now the question remains, will you step into what you've always been destined for? They never saw it coming. They never saw you coming. Because you didn't arrive with the noise of popularity, you didn't walk into the room with accolades or applause. You came in quietly, carrying something they couldn't see with their eyes, but they'll soon feel it in their spirit. There's a pattern that heaven has never broken. When God is about to shift something on earth, He doesn't choose the loudest voice, the most followed account, or the most polished performer. He chooses the one who's been in the shadows, the one who was overlooked, underdeveloped in the eyes of man, but overqualified in the eyes of God. And if you trace the footsteps of the chosen throughout time, you'll see it again and again. The rejected, the forgotten, the ones who were never invited to the table until the moment came where the table needed them more than they needed it. Think about Moses, raised in Pharaoh's palace, yes, but then hidden in the wilderness for 40 years, not 40 minutes, not 40 days, 40 years. Everyone had forgotten him, but heaven hadn't. When it was time to bring a nation out of bondage, God didn't call a strategist or a general. He called a man who stuttered, a man who didn't feel qualified, a man who had nothing left to prove because life had already stripped away every illusion. And that's what qualifies you. Life stripped away the illusions. You're not chasing applause anymore. You're not performing for validation. You're walking in obedience even when no one's clapping. And that, right there, is the exact kind of person heaven can trust. Then there's David. When the prophet Samuel came looking for the next king, Jesse lined up all his sons, except the one who was the king. David wasn't even considered worthy of the room. He was out in the fields, writing psalms no one would hear, fighting lions no one would see, worshipping with a harp instead of a sword. And yet, when the oil flowed, it refused to pour over the ones who looked the part. It waited for the one who had the heart. And maybe you've wondered why you keep being passed over, why doors opened for others while you kept showing up in silence. But hear this, the oil doesn't flow over the obvious. It flows over the anointed. And you've been anointed long before anyone ever acknowledged it. Esther, too, an orphan hidden in a foreign land. She didn't seek a crown. She wasn't campaigning for attention, but purpose found her. And in the moment when her people faced extinction, it wasn't the warriors or the politicians who carried the key to salvation. It was the quiet woman who had learned how to fast, how to pray, how to wait on timing instead of rushing with ambition. That's you. You've learned how to wait, how to war in the spirit when the world offered you nothing. And now your moment is approaching, not because you pushed your way forward, but because heaven is pulling you into position. But with this pattern comes pain, and that pain often manifests as misunderstanding. For as long as you can remember, you've been misunderstood. People saw your strength and called it pride. They mistook your silence for weakness. They laughed at your convictions, rolled their eyes at your vision, and dismissed your warnings. And for a while, you questioned yourself. You wondered if maybe you were too intense, too deep, too serious. But what you didn't know then is what you're beginning to understand now. Their confusion was never your problem. Their discomfort wasn't your burden, because the gift inside you has always been bigger than their comprehension. You walk into rooms and feel what others miss. You sense tension before anyone says a word. You discern motives when others are still distracted by charm. That's not paranoia. That's prophetic sensitivity. And while the world labeled you too sensitive, heaven called it spiritual radar. You were made to feel differently because you were made to see differently. And in the days to come, that gift, the one they mocked, is the very gift they'll come running toward. Because deception is rising, darkness is deepening, and in the chaos, those who used to laugh will be desperate for light. And you, chosen one, were built to shine exactly when the power goes out. It hasn't been easy carrying what you carry. When your mind operates on a different frequency and your spirit picks up signals others ignore, it can feel like loneliness, like rejection. But it's not. It's divine insulation. You weren't designed to blend. You were fashioned to stand out when it matters most. And now it does matter most. Because the world is unraveling, systems are failing, leaders are confused. But your clarity, once mocked, is now magnetic. That feeling in your gut that always turned out to be right, it wasn't luck, it was legacy. It was the evidence of God whispering through your spirit. And it's why the next wave of leaders aren't looking for credentials, they're looking for connection. Connection to something real, to something ancient, to something eternal. That's what you carry. There's a gift you've hidden even from yourself. A light so powerful, it scared you. A truth so bold, you suppressed it just to survive in circles that feared what they didn't understand. But no more. That gift is about to be awakened. Because your environment is no longer your limiter. Your calling is now the compass. The time of shrinking is over. The time of apologizing for your sensitivity, your depth, your insight, that's finished. You were misunderstood because you were misplaced. But that's changing. The table is shifting. The seats are being rearranged. And those who once laughed are going to ask, "How did you know?" And you'll smile. Not with arrogance, but with holy assurance. Because you always knew. You just didn't know it would matter this much. And now we arrive at the reason you've been protected. The reason things didn't work out the way you planned. The reason certain doors refused to open, even though you knocked with everything you had. You carry something that cannot be taught. You hold something that cannot be purchased. The world chases charisma, but what they need is character. They applaud cleverness, but what they crave now is clarity. And in a world drowning in opinions, you carry truth. You've been protected not to keep you small, but to keep you pure. And now, that purity is about to be your passport. Because those in power are reaching their limit. Their solutions aren't solving. Their strategies aren't sticking. They don't say it out loud, but behind closed doors, they're admitting it. We need help. And not the kind that comes from another consultant or another plan. They need help that comes from beyond them. And unknowingly, they are being drawn, spirit, to people like you, to the ones who prayed when no one else believed, to the ones who listened when the world was loud, to the ones who carry God's wisdom like fire in their bones. It's not about religion, it's about relevance. You're not here to preach at them. You're here to carry solutions that only heaven could reveal. This is why you had to endure what you did. Because wisdom like yours doesn't come from textbooks. It's forged in the fire. It's born from betrayal, cultivated in the cave, matured through heartbreak and holy silence. You learned discernment because lies hurt you. You gained strategy because survival demanded it. You developed vision because all you had was faith. And now all of it, the pain, the process, the prayers, is converging into a single, undeniable reality. You're ready. Ready for rooms that once intimidated you. Ready for doors that once rejected you. Ready for divine connections that are no longer delayed, but deployed. Not because you pushed your way in, but because heaven sent you. Because God is placing you exactly where you're needed, at the exact moment you're needed most. There are moments in life when time seems to pause, and something deep inside you says, "This is different." You can't explain it. You can't rationalize it. But everything in your spirit knows that something significant is about to shift. This isn't just another video, another message, another hour passing by. This is a divine interruption. It's as if all the delays, all the detours, all the disappointment has led to this moment. You've sensed it coming, a restlessness that won't leave, a stirring that won't be silenced, a knowing that your life was never meant to stay in the shadows forever. And now, that knowing is being confirmed. You've been faithful in obscurity. You've prayed prayers no one heard. You've obeyed instructions no one applauded. You've stood when others sat down. You've wept while others celebrated. And you've held on to a vision that seemed foolish to everyone else but you. And just when you thought the silence might last forever, here comes the shift. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It doesn't need a dramatic entrance. But it's undeniable. The pieces are aligning. The whispers in your spirit are becoming louder. The opportunities you stopped chasing are now chasing you. Because divine appointments don't respond to hustle. They respond to obedience. Something you need to understand is this. The kingdom of God doesn't move according to earthly timelines. While others were building platforms, God was building you. While they were rushing ahead, He was rooting you deep. Because what He's building in you can't be shaken. What He's preparing to release through you can't be stolen. And what's about to be revealed about you will make perfect sense of every hidden season you've endured. It wasn't punishment, it was protection, it wasn't delay, it was development. And now that development has reached its tipping point. But this is not just about stepping into influence. It's about stepping into responsibility. Because the world isn't looking for more noise, it's looking for answers. Governments are failing, leaders are faltering, financial systems are collapsing. And behind closed doors, high-ranking officials are beginning to whisper what they're too afraid to admit publicly: we don't know what to do. And while they scramble for strategies, heaven has already made its move. And its move is you, yes, you, the hidden one, the prepared one, the one who carries something that no university could ever teach. They're not looking for the popular, they're looking for the anointed. Right now, we are in the early stages of something prophetic, something historic. A divine transfer is beginning, not just of wealth, but of influence, of authority, of leadership. For decades, power has been hoarded by the corrupt. Influence has been sold to the highest bidder, but that time is over. The shift has begun. God is not simply raising up individuals to be rich. He's raising up individuals to reign. This isn't about greed. It's about governance. It's about putting spiritual integrity back in places where compromise has ruled for too long. And that's why you've been kept in the fire so long, because your foundation must be unshakable. Make no mistake, the wealth transfer is not a theory. It's not symbolic. It is literal, tangible, and already unfolding. You're not waiting for it. It's waiting for you. You've been entrusted with a stewardship mindset. That's why lack couldn't break you. That's why debt didn't define you. Because even when you had little, you still gave. Even when you were broke, you still blessed others. Heaven took note of that. While others manipulated their way to the top, you worshipped your way through the valley. While they schemed, you sowed. While they competed, you consecrated. And that is why the wealth of the wicked is being redirected to the hands of the righteous, because God knows who will use it for purpose and not pride. The world calls it a financial crisis, but in the spirit, it's a divine redistribution. Money is fleeing unstable hands, power is fleeing corrupted voices, and influence is being relocated to vessels who are ready to carry it without losing their soul in the process. This is not prosperity preaching. This is prophetic positioning. This is the moment where you realize that every job loss, every closed opportunity, every denied promotion was actually God saying, "Not this way. I've got something greater." You weren't created to make a living. You were created to move mountains. You weren't born to chase money. You were born to command it. But here's the most critical piece. You have to be ready to be seen. That's the part nobody talks about. For years, it was easier to be hidden. It was safer. The criticism was softer. The opinions were fewer. You could quietly build, develop, and grow without resistance. But that grace is lifting. Because you're being called out of hiding. And the question isn't, will they see me? It's, will I rise when they do? Because visibility requires vulnerability, and the platform isn't the prize, the purpose is. If you want to influence palaces, you have to first be trusted in prison, and you were. If you want to impact leaders, you must be rooted in truth, and you are. The next season won't ask you to become something new. It will ask you to reveal who you've always been. The training is complete. The testing is over. The alignment is set. This is the moment you stop downplaying your discernment, stop shrinking your calling, stop doubting your authority. You were never too much. You were exactly what the broken system was going to require. And now, as people in positions of power begin to reach out, don't flinch, don't second guess, don't explain away your insight like it's coincidence. You're not lucky, you're called. This is what heaven has been preparing you for. The season where your name gets mentioned in rooms you didn't even know existed, where your spiritual clarity is suddenly valued at the highest levels of leadership, where your once overlooked wisdom becomes the key that unlocks solutions they couldn't find on their own. They're not coming to you because of your fame, they're coming because of your flame, that fire you never let go out, even in the coldest seasons of your life. Don't be surprised when influence finds you. Don't be shocked when doors that were welded shut suddenly swing wide open. This isn't random. This isn't new. This is the moment your entire wilderness was preparing you for. You didn't go through the fire just to say you survived. You went through it so you could walk into the next room carrying the answer. And when that moment comes, when they ask, "Where have you been all this time?" you'll know exactly what to say. "I've been with God," and that will be enough. The world is unraveling faster than anyone expected. Leaders who once boasted confidence are now whispering confusion behind closed doors. Economists are scrambling to predict outcomes they can no longer model. Political voices sound louder but less certain. Crisis is no longer a far-off concept. It's a daily headline. But while panic is rising in the streets and chaos brews behind polished podiums, something else, something far more powerful, is rising quietly. Chosen ones, people who have been hidden, people who have been through fire, through silence, through seasons that stripped everything familiar away. These aren't just survivors, these are leaders in disguise. For when systems break and nations tremble, God's pattern remains unchanged. He raises up the unexpected, He lifts the hidden, and He moves through those the world would never pick, but heaven has already chosen. Crisis always creates opportunity for divine elevation. Think about Joseph. It wasn't until famine ravaged the land that Pharaoh desperately sought someone with real answers. Joseph didn't have a title. He wasn't known in high society. But he carried something that couldn't be ignored when the stakes were high: divine strategy. And just like Joseph, you've been entrusted with something far more valuable than applause. You've been given clarity, wisdom, vision, and now the conditions are perfect for your emergence. Because when everything the world relies on begins to fail, what was hidden by man becomes revealed by God. This is not just a season of trouble, it's a season of unveiling, and the pressure of the moment is about to reveal the power you carry. Let that settle in your spirit. You were not an afterthought. You were an answer in waiting. Every trial that almost broke you, every betrayal that hollowed your heart, every lonely night that made you question your worth, it all shaped something in you that couldn't be formed any other way. And now, while others tremble, you're standing stronger. While systems fall apart, your spirit is clearer. That's not by accident. That's divine preparation. You are the kind of leader who doesn't flinch when storms hit. You're the kind of voice that cuts through noise with truth. You've got scars, but they've become your strength. And now, you are being positioned to walk into spaces that used to intimidate you, carrying answers no one else could find. But here's the truth: no one tells you about purpose. It doesn't come looking like a dream. It shows up disguised as responsibility. You will be called upon not for your image, but for your insight. Not because you lobbied for attention, but because your light became impossible to ignore. Influence is not the reward. It's the tool, and everything you've gone through was meant to prove whether you could hold it without it corrupting your soul. You passed that test, even when it hurt, even when you were overlooked. You kept your hands clean, you stayed faithful, and now heaven is shifting the spotlight, not to inflate your ego, but to fulfill your assignment. So prepare yourself, not just to be seen, but to be trusted. The people who dismissed you, they'll return. The leaders who laughed, they'll seek your advice. And when that moment comes, you won't need to raise your voice or prove your worth. You'll simply carry the weight of what God placed in you, and that weight will speak for itself. Your time in the background wasn't wasted. It was building the kind of character that this world is starving for. The kind that doesn't bow to pressure. The kind that doesn't sell out for popularity. The kind that still believes in truth, even when the world prefers a lie. But to walk in that space, something in you has to settle once and for all. You must silence the inner dialogue that tells you you're not ready. You must stop measuring your readiness by how people see you and start recognizing it by what heaven has placed inside you. The evidence is already there. You've been dreaming bigger. You've been sensing more. Your prayers have changed. Your atmosphere has shifted. That's not just spiritual activity. That's divine alignment. And when God aligns you, no earthly resistance can stop what comes next. You've been hidden for a reason, but that reason is no longer valid. The hiding season is over, and now the call is simple but weighty. Will you step forward when the door opens? Because the door will open. In fact, it's already swinging, not because you demanded it, but because God designed it. And when it opens, you won't walk through as a beggar. You'll walk in as a builder. The very systems that denied you are being dismantled. The very rooms that ignored you are being restructured. And those in power, they're being led, whether they know it or not, straight to you. This is the season where heaven says, now. Not soon. Not maybe. Now. And in that now, there is a fresh anointing being poured out on those who said yes in private, those who didn't quit, those who didn't change their message just to fit in. You are part of a divine deployment, strategic, precise, intentional. You are not called to echo the world's fears. You are called to prophesy its future. And that future is beginning now. The darkness was necessary. It made your light undeniable. So if you're still asking, am I really the one for this? Stop. You are. Not because you feel ready, but because God made you ready in ways you can't even see yet. The enemy tried everything to take you out in the wilderness, but you're still here, and you're stronger than you know. Now comes the final question, the one you have to answer not with your words, but with your life. Will you rise when called? Because what's coming next will not allow for hiding. The door won't knock twice, and the ones who are willing to rise, who are willing to embrace responsibility, not just reward, those are the ones heaven is backing in this hour. If you feel the fire in your bones, if you sense the acceleration in your spirit, it's because your moment isn't approaching. It has arrived. You are not stepping into something new. You are stepping into something you were born for. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need their approval. You've already been authorized by heaven. The question is no longer, will they see me? The question now is, will I show up? Will you take your place at the table? Will you speak when prompted? Will you carry what you've been trusted with? Because the divine appointment has already been scheduled. The meeting is not a possibility, it's a certainty. The ones in power are being drawn to what you carry, and all of heaven is watching to see if you will rise. Not as someone pretending to be strong, but as someone who has already become strong in the fire, in the silence, in the process. This is your time. The door is open. Now walk through it.